Good morning.
Hi, morning. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you clearly.
Okay, Jamelia, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm gonna ask for everyone to mute their microphone so that, hi Kimon, I'm just seeing where Kimon has arrived. I'm gonna ask everyone to just mute their microphone so that we're not gonna be hearing any background noise or any feedback. Um, And we're going to go right into our session. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the SWAT job selection process. We're going to be going through quickly. You can ask your questions through our chat menu that you're going to be seeing at the bottom of your dialog box. I'll also like to welcome Mrs. Glenisha Dwyer Williams. She's our general manager, and she's going to be co-organizing the meeting with me this morning. So whenever you're sending your chat messages, your questions, you're going to do it not privately, but send it publicly so that she can see your questions and she can send responses to your messages while we're going through the presentation. I'm going to also be taking questions as well at the end of this session. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. So if you're able to see my screen, just send a message quickly to say you're seeing the screen. Jamelia, Kimon. Jamelia, are you seeing this? Okay, Jamelia says she's seeing the screen. Kimon, are you seeing the screen? You're supposed to be seeing a PowerPoint presentation on your monitor. All right, so I'm not seeing a response from Kimon. Kimon, are you hearing me? Okay, great. So Kimon is seeing it. So we can go right ahead and start. All right, so for the students that are joining us, you would have already made a payment towards your program fee. So you're at the stage now where you need to start selecting your job. So a lot of students have been sending emails and they've been asking after they pay their registration, what is it that they're supposed to do next? Or after they pay their program fee deposit, what do they do next? The first thing that you need to do is you need to be going to the website, because at the point of registration, you would have created an online account with us, and that's the account that you're going to be using throughout the season. So you're going to be going on our website, which is www.studentsworkandtravel.com. And basically, when you go on the website, you're going to be logging in. So you're going to sign into your account. Right? Now, when you sign into your account, you would have signed in with your email address and a password. Now, once you sign into the account, there are some documents that we expect you to submit. I'm finding that students from time to time, they are overlooking this very important section of the account. So for the account, you're going to need certain documents. So it says that documents to bring in office after your US 500 deposit is made. So you need your status letter, you need your school ID, you need to come to the office prepared to take a photo, so you're not going to be physically expecting to bring your photos, because the cost of the photos is already included in your package. Ensure that you pay attention to this clause right here: no white shirt or any color close to white, since the background that you're taking your photo against is white. You also need to bring in your passport. Sorry, you also need to bring in your passport, and the passport should not expire before March 2018. All right. You're also expected to bring in a transcript, but the transcript comes in at the end of January. That's January 2017, so you don't need to bring in your transcript until the end of January, right? For self-placed students, you would have to bring in the business license, workers' compensation for the employer, and a completed self-placement form. Good. All right, so that's the first thing. So once you know that you've paid your $500, the set of documents that you need to bring in, they're right there on your portal. When you take a picture, the picture will be uploaded for you as seen here. Let me just go back quickly. Right. For the status letter, I know that some students are facing difficulties in getting their status letter within a timely manner. So that is why it's so important that you request your status letter from early out. Some schools, they're taking 10 business days or even more to get back the status letter to the students. So if you've not requested your status letter as yet, as soon as school reopens, you need to do that. All right, so if you've only registered, then you need to pay your security deposit, but I'm sure that for Kimon and Jamelia, I think it is, they would have already made security deposit payments, so you would have already passed this stage. So the next stage is you're still in your online account. When you log into your online account, you would have selected the job list link. Let me just go back quickly. A few slides before, you would have seen the job list link, which is right here on the screen to your right hand. And when you select the job list link, it is going to route you to this window where you're able to see the PowerPoint presentation right up here that says job selection process PowerPoint. And you would also be able to see 4 videos on the page. We require that you go through the PowerPoint presentation and you also go through the 4 videos so that you will have a better understanding as to how to make your job selections. All right. Now, after you've reviewed the 4 PowerPoints, after you've reviewed the PowerPoint and the videos, you're going to be required to scroll down. When you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see the message, the job list link that is here at the bottom of the screen. Right? You're going to click on that job list link. I'm finding that some students, after they review the video, they're saying that they're not seeing the job list link, but always remember to go down to the bottom and you'll be able to see it. And when you click on the job list link, you're going to be routed to this folder, and this is the SWAT 2016 to 2017 job list. Here, well, in the folder as we speak, you won't see the Spirit folder that has been taken down because there are no jobs there. However, for the CHI, I know that 2 jobs were posted, I believe yesterday. And for the CCI job list, there is 1 job that's there. However, for that job, they're only hiring at this time lifeguards because the other positions that are in the job list, they are already filled. Right? Now, it's very important that you ensure that before you even start going through the job selections, that you pay careful attention to this document here, and this is your placement instructions. A number of students haven't been paying careful attention. They haven't even been reading this document, and the placement instructions is what actually tells you how to select a job, how to make your request, where to send the email to say that you're interested in a particular job. So we find a number of emails coming in office from students asking how do they make their selections when the document is right there that can assist them. If you're going to be selecting any jobs from CCI, you also need to read this document, and it's the CCI job notes. Now, the CCI job notes is what is going to tell you whether or not a particular CCI job is only for females or males, or if they're only hiring 2 persons, even though in the job description you may see that they need 10 students. Remember that we're not the only agency that they're hiring from. So that is why you need to ensure that when you're selecting from different folders, if there are special notations in the job list folder, you should ensure that you acquaint yourself with them before you go ahead and you start your selections. All right. So moving on. So you're going to read through the placement instructions as indicated, and you're going to read the CCI job notes. Now, there are a few factors that you need to consider before making your job selections. Now, what are they? The factors that needs to be considered before making your job selections are any special incentives that are available. You should never choose a job solely based on its pay rate. I know that a lot of students make this mistake every year. They go through the job list, they're looking for a $15 job, a $12 job, a $10 job, and they overlook the jobs that pays $7 or $8 or $9 per hour, because to them, the more you make, the more you're able to save. But that's not exactly true, because there are other factors that can affect how much you're going to be able to save at the end of the day. So what are these factors? These factors are called special incentives, and you're to check for special incentives. So some of these incentives are you can receive a subsidized meal, or you can be getting free meal. So I know there are some companies, some employers where you actually don't pay for your lunches while you're on the job, or if you do pay, you're paying a fraction of the amount that it would have cost the average customer if they were dining at that establishment. There are also overtime hours that are available. Some jobs provide you with overtime, some jobs don't, and that is over 40 hours per week. Now, there are some jobs that do give you overtime, but they're not paying you at a special rate. So let's say, for example, your regular pay rate is $8 or $7 per hour, but then your overtime pay rate is going to be at time and a half. So not only do you get $8 per hour once you're working over 40 hours for the week, but you're getting paid time and a half. So it will be $8 plus $4, that's $12 per hour. Now you're going to be looking out for jobs like that, because if you're able to get overtime and you're able to be paying at a time and a half, then that would be good for you. So it works out, right? All right, so another thing to consider is how will you get to work? See which job has the lowest transportation costs. There are some jobs that doesn't require you to even commute to work. So you don't have to take a bus, you don't have to take a train, you can simply walk to work. If you're able to walk to work, then that's more money that you're keeping in your pocket because you're able to save more, correct? So that's another thing that you need to look out for. So of course, here you have persons that are commuting to work via a bicycle. And it's not strange. A number of students, when they go overseas, they purchase a bicycle at the start of the summer. They commute via the bicycle and they sell it when they're ready to leave. And a bicycle isn't extremely expensive. So you can do that. You can choose to cycle your way to work. I mean, you get fit over the summer and it is not costing you much. That is if you're not living far away from where you're working. And some persons can simply walk. Of course, I don't expect people to be hitchhiking, so that was just placed there for fun, right? All right. Now, another thing that you need to consider is whether or not housing is affordable, right? If, let's say, for example, your rent is $100 per week or $80 or $50 per week. Once it's less than 100, then that is an affordable rent that you're paying per week. But when it reaches 100 or the over 100, then that's a little bit pricey. However, students must give and take because some states are more expensive than others. So for example, the popular states that students normally go to are like New York, or they want to go to California. But one thing that they should realize is that these states, the cost of living is high, so rent is very expensive in New York, especially if you're living in the city area. So you want to look for jobs that are more in the out-of-state area, jobs that aren't in the city where it's going to be hard to find housing or the rent is going to be extremely high. Again, the cost of living, some states are cheaper if you're supposed to shop or buy food or stuff, while others are, not as expensive. So, if you're going to be going to LA, or if you're going to be going to a tourist area to work, you already mentally prepare yourself that the cost of living in a tourist area is going to be higher than if you weren't working in a tourist resort, because automatically they're going to be pricing their things much, much higher because it's a tourist resort, right? So again, you look at those things with the job and you see what compensates for the other. So fine, you may be working at a tourist resort, but the rent is low, or maybe you're not spending that much for transportation, or you're not spending anything for transportation because you live where the hotel or the resort is located. So you know how to give and take, all right? Can I get a second job? That's another thing that students normally ask for. No, there's nothing preventing a student, excuse me, there's nothing preventing a student from working more than one job. There's no restriction on that. However, if you're going to get a second job, you have to do it the correct way. So the correct way is, most employers that are taking on students and they're not a part of the J1 program, they're going to require some kind of paperwork. So the paperwork that you need to give your employer would be a self-placement form that you can easily get from your sponsor, and you give it to that second employer. You have the employer fill it out. You're going to need to request from the employer a copy of their business license and their workers' compensation. And the reason why you're required to do this is because the Department of State makes it mandatory for the overseas sponsor to do background checks on any second, third, fourth employers that you're going to be working with. Remember that we provide you with only one job, and that one job would have gone through the proper procedures in terms of us making sure that the job is legitimate, taxes are being paid by that company, and all of that. So when you're going to go over there and find a second job, the sponsor also needs to do background check on that second employer, right? So you can get a second job, but you have to ensure that you follow the correct procedures. When you're looking at the job descriptions, look and see if you can, if there's a possibility for second jobs in the area. There are some jobs that don't allow students to get second jobs because of how they set up your shift. So because your shift may change every week, the employer knows off the bat that you won't be able to hold down a second job if your shift is constantly changing. So always look at the job description to see if that section states that second job is a possibility. However, remember that you don't have to get a second job if your first job is giving you more than enough hours. So therefore, you find that you're working at a theme park and you're getting up to 40 hours every week, then a job like that doesn't require you for you to get a second job, because you don't want to be burnt out by the end of the summer. So try and be practical. You only need a second job if you're really not getting that much hours from your primary job. All right. You also need to pay attention to the average hours that you're going to be working per week. Now, a lot of students tend to mistake the term average hours. So your average hours does not by any means mean that this is your fixed amount of hours you're going to be getting every single week. So you may look at a job description and you're seeing that you're getting 35 hours on average. How the employer came up with that 35 hours is that they took last season's employees' hours, and what they did, they added up all the hours that they worked for the entire 3 or 4 months that the student was there, and they divided it by the number of days or the number of weeks that they worked, and they came up with an average. So an average really means more or less. You can get 35 hours this week, maybe 32 hours next week, maybe 30 hours the following week, then you get 40 hours another week. And so it's going to be up and down. It's not fixed, right? But always look at the average hours, and you want to kind of go for the contract that gives you as much average hours as possible, right? The employers are normally also honest enough to go as far as to say what months you can expect to get the most hours and the months you can expect to get the least as a guide. Right? Are there any advantages in going to a remote area? In my experience being in this industry, I find that jobs that are located further away from the city are normally more advantageous in terms of the cost of living. It's normally lower. Rent is normally lower. Some of the drawbacks with those jobs, though, is that if they're in too much of a remote area, students may find a problem finding a second job. So if you're going to take a job that is remotely located, Google the area, try and see where's the nearest mall so that you can see if there's a possibility for you to get a second job, right? And if you do that, then from the get-go, you'll know exactly what the geographical area is like and whether or not it will work out in your best interest. Right? So basically, we're doing this because we want you to make very smart decisions, make wise selections, and not to rush in the process. Too often, students are rushing through the job selection process, and they're not spending time on ensuring that they're not taking time to ensure that they're making the correct selections. So do not rush the process, right? Never choose a second or a third job if you really don't like the job. I know we say to students that they need to make 3 selections. For Spirit, at the time when we had jobs for Spirit, I know that that sponsor requires that you make 3 job selections. So you have to send in 3. However, I know that there's some flexibility with CCI and CHI. So since those are the 2 sponsors that has jobs now, those are the sponsors that you're going to be selecting from. And if you only see one job that you like, send in the one selection, right? Because you may very well be placed in that selection, so we wouldn't have needed to consider your second or your third choice. But it's always good to send in at least 2 or 3. That way, if you don't get through for your first choice, we can look at the second, all right? All right, and as with everything, try not to be too indecisive about your selections. We've been experiencing students making their selections and then canceling the selections at the last minute and then making over selections again, and it kind of bombards us with too many back and forth. So once you've decided on what you want, then you make sure that that is your final decision. If you're going to end up choosing over jobs after you've been placed, it's going to cost. So if you cancel your placement and you want to do another placement with another sponsor, that will cost you $100 to change, and that's US. And if you cancel but you want to stay with the same sponsor and just choose another job, that's $50. My best bet is to just avoid the added cost and just ensure that you are very decisive when you make your decisions, right? All right, so one very important thing is for students to not get frustrated with the entire process, and I'm seeing some of that happening for our first batch of students that started the job selection process. So they send in their selections, they don't get placed in any of those 3, they send in another 3, they don't get placed, and of course, understandably, they're going to start getting a little bit depressed, and then they'll start getting probably angry, and then they're going to remind the office, remember I paid my money and all of that, which is fair. However, students should also remember that, as we've stated in our contract, persons are placed according to when they had paid their deposit. We have over 1,500 students that have registered so far with SWAT. And those students that have paid out of that amount that have registered, those are the students that we're focusing on, right? So once you've paid your $500, you're entitled to be placed in a job. However, we can't place everybody at one time. So to make it fair, what we do is we make a note of when your payment was made, right? And once your payment has been made, if you send in a job request, let's say, for example, we have a job at McDonald's and it's hiring 5 students. 10 students sent in applications for the job, but there are only 5 spaces. What we do, we take the first 5 students who made their payment, to be fair, because if persons have paid from in August when we started taking registrations, we believe that those August students should be placed in a job first, and that's how we do it, right? So if you are one of the 10 that didn't make your payment early, then you won't be one of the 5 persons that will be placed, and that is why we will send an email to say you need to select over again. But that that doesn't mean you need to get angry or you need to be frustrated, because once you understand and appreciate that we're placing students according to how they paid, and you know that you didn't start paying until September, October, or November, then you know that you would need to exercise some more patience, right? So don't get frustrated or angry with the process, because our goal is to ensure that once students have paid their 500, they will eventually be placed, right? And we still have jobs that will be coming out in January. So you don't need to panic. Right. So after you've been pre-placed in a job, what happens next is that you're going to have to prepare yourself for an interview. Now, the interview can be handled either via Skype, or you can attend the interview at a job fair. Some employers are unable to come to Jamaica to do a physical interview with students. So what they've done, they've asked the sponsors to interview on their behalf. So in February, we're going to be having sponsors for CCI and CHI flying down, spending a few days in Jamaica just so that they can interview students on behalf of the employers that the students have been pre-placed with. And this is not anything to be worried about. Hundreds of students are hired at the job fair, and the sponsors by no means are coming to say we are not going to be taking you. We've sent you up for a position. They basically are confident on our selection that this student will do good in the job. So they just want to meet you, match a name to the face, and ensure that, yes, you're confirmed in the position. So it's not an interview to say, no, we don't want you, right? Unless you really go to that interview and do a bad interview, you're not having a bubbly personality, you're not friendly, you're not pleasant during the interview, then that may be some cause for concerns. And from time to time, we've had where the sponsor would have to take us aside to say, I have some concerns about this student because of their whole mannerism during the interview, right? So aside from that, in terms of how you handle yourself in the interview where your personality is concerned, I mean, the sponsors are really here to confirm you into your position. So there's no reason for you to panic, right? Now, another thing that you need to certainly remember is that throughout the entire job selection process, you need to remain positive, you need to be patient, and you need to be persistent, right? So again, do not panic, do not easily get frustrated if you're not placed in your first set of selections, because there are always going to be other jobs that will be coming on board. Right? And overall, we want you to have fun with the job selection process. Engage your parents as well, because sometimes students select jobs and they don't go off the recommendation of their parents, and then their parents end up calling the office not being too pleased with what the student had selected. So ensure you engage your parents or your friends when you're going through the job so that they too can offer some advice when you're making your selections. All right, so at this point, we're going to go into our live demo, and I'm actually going to go through a job that is on the job list and show you how I would have gone through the job list folder. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me while I switch. Remember, during the session, you can ask your questions. Feel free to ask your questions through the chat message, and Mrs. Williams is there to answer any questions that you have. So, hold on. When you're signing into your account, you would actually have to go through the www.studentsworkandtravel website. So that's exactly what I'm doing. When the site comes up, of course, you guys should know this already. You're going to click on the first globe that is to your left. So I'm just waiting for this page to fully load. All right, so you click on the SWAT USA globe to your left. Then you're going to click on login because you would have already created your online account. And of course, there's our important notice for students that wanted to do self-placement, that our self-placement spots are filled, so we're only taking job assist applicants. Just bear with us while I sign in. All right, I'm gonna log in right here. Okay, perfect. So we're now in our demo account. Mr. Eric Johns, he is our IT system specialist, and he's the person that you speak to if you're having any technical difficulties with your account. You can't sign in, password is saying invalid. You can just send an email to Eric at studentsworkandtravel.com, and he's the one that will assist you, or you can call our office. All right, so now we're in the account, and as you can see, let me just go from the top. Hold on 1 minute. All right, so when you take your photo is going to be displayed to the left of this screen. Hold on. All right, your photo will be displayed. We're the persons that's in charge of uploading your documents. The only documents that you upload on your portal is your resume. So for example, passport, that's uploaded by us, status letter, that's uploaded by us. So students should not be uploading that on their own. If you notice on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a contract. My system is moving a little bit slow, so bear with me. But on the left side of the screen, there's a contract. That's a SWAT contract that every student should have read. If you have not gone through your SWAT contract, you need to do so as soon as you come off this online session so that it can be, sorry, hold on. So right, so you need to go through your contract so that you're familiar with what the policies are. All right. All right, so to the right of the screen, there is a job list link. That is where you're going to access the job list. So you just quickly select it. And as indicated before, you're going to be routed to the page where there is the PowerPoint that you should be going through, as well as the videos. At the end of that page, to the bottom, if you recall the PowerPoint slide, there's a job list link. Once the page loads, then we're going to be clicking on that link. There we go. So we have the, hold on. Just waiting for this page to load properly. So we're just trying to go to the bottom of the page to select the job list link. And once that link is selected, it should route us to the folder where we can go through the CHI or CCI folder to see what jobs have been posted. All right, so let's try this once again. right, so it's now coming up that the page is unresponsive for some reason. Let's try once again. Ah, great, it's opening up. Right, so now that it's opening up to the job list folder, we just wait until it fully loads, and then I'm going to go to the CHI. Since we had 2 jobs posted to the CHI folder, I'm just going to take a quick look at one of those jobs. All right, so in the meantime, while that folder loads, there is a document that I actually created in Excel called the job evaluation sheet. And for this sheet, here is where I would enter the name of the company. So for example, let's say you looked in the CHI folder and you saw McDonald's. So I would enter McDonald's here, right? Sorry. So I would enter McDonald's here. And let's say, for example, so I have my pros and my cons. So easily I'm going to see whether or not the advantages outweighs the disadvantages for this McDonald's job. So I'm going to look at the job description and I'm going to pick out certain criteria that I'm looking for. And just in case you don't remember what those criteria were, they're here on your right-hand side. So you're looking out to see if there are any subsidized or free meals. You're also looking to see what the availability is in terms of overtime and what rate you're being paid at overtime. You're looking to see if there's any possibility of a second job if the average hours for the job isn't so high. You're also looking at the transportation costs, rent affordability, cost of living, right? And again, as I said, the average hours per week. So it's good if you can have a spreadsheet like this as your guide, because that is how I'm expecting students to go through the job list and not to just be looking on the paper and just making selections, because you may very well end up selecting something that you're not gonna so much like after you're placed, right? So let's go back and see if the window has been loaded. It is. So I'm gonna click. So here you're seeing CCI, CHI, you're seeing the CCI job notes, and again you're seeing the placement instruction sheet. Remember, please remember to look at this placement instruction sheet. All right. We're gonna take a quick look at it if time allows, but let's just quickly go into the CHI folder and look at one of the jobs that were posted. All right, so for now, I'm seeing only one job posted. So it's the Beachmart job. And I'm seeing, okay, well, the folder is still loading. So let me just give it some chance to load properly. All right, let's see if we select it here, if it's gonna open. And in the meantime, while that loads, I'm gonna have us take a quick look at the placement instruction sheet. Okay, all right, well, the job loaded first, so I guess we can take a quick look at it. All right, so this is Beachmart, and NC means that it's located in North Carolina. So from the get-go, you know the state where the job is located. All right, so it's still loading. Giving it some time. All right, let's continue to give it some time to load. All right, so while that still loads, let's just shift our attention to the placement instruction sheet. So for the placement instruction sheet, if you go through, you'll see right at the top that it says that all selections should be emailed to swatinfo@studentsworkandtravel.com. What we've been experiencing is that students are sending their placement instructions to other emails, such as SWAT experience. If you do that, then there's going to be a delay with your emails being responded. So all right, so in order, if you've narrowed down a selection and you want to send in your selection, you're going to compose a new email. So do not respond to an email that was sent a few days ago with your selection. So you're going to open a brand new email message by selecting compose, and in the subject line, you're going to place placement request and your name in brackets, right? If you want to select multiple positions from different sponsors, you're gonna still only send one email. So let's say you want to select from both CCI and CHI. You don't need to send an email for your CCI selections and one for your CHI. You can send both in one email, right? Now, the section that speaks to Spirit, we're going to bypass that since we do not have any jobs for Spirit. And we're just going to go right down. It says, for persons viewing jobs from the CCI folder, you should ensure that you read the CCI job notes as I have directed you to do from earlier. If you're going to be selecting three preferences or more than one sponsor, you're going to put in the body of your email multiple sponsors, and then you're going to put under that first preference, so we know which job you really truly want to be placing above all else. So you have first preference, then you put the sponsor's name, and you put the name of the company and the position ID. However, remember that position IDs don't come with every job. I've been seeing emails with students being frustrated. They're saying they're not seeing a position ID for CCI job. CCI jobs don't normally come, sometimes don't come with position ID. So if you don't see position ID there, you don't have to put it, but ensure you put the name of the company and the position that you're applying for, right? And same thing. So second preference is with another sponsor, third preference is with another sponsor, but they're all in one email, right? If you're selecting from one sponsor, you just put one sponsor in the body and state the sponsor's name, and then you just list your preferences, right? And again, there's a special notation that students are placed based on the date their program fee deposit is paid. We can't hold spaces for anyone, so don't send in your request just to hold a space. Once you send in your selections, we're going to take it that is where you want to be placed. And, you know, the rest of the document is there for you as a guide. So I implore once again that students go through the placement instruction sheet so that they're making their selections properly. All right, so now that our page has fully loaded, we're going to start. So the position that this job is hiring for is a cashier, right? Pay rate is $8 per hour, which isn't bad. So I will put that as a pro, that the pay rate is $8. And then scrolling down, and if you notice, the position ID for this job is right there. If you don't know where to find the position ID. Let's go back to the second page. All right, so this job says that, I'm trying to get back up to the top here. Let's try this. All right, so on the second page, it says no tips are given, right? However, it says there's a bonus. So that's another, that to me, that would be a pro, right? It says $100 bonus at the end of your contract if you have respected the dates you signed for. Now, this is extremely important because students sometimes don't honor their contract dates. If you sign to start working May 20th and to stop working September 3rd, do not go to your employer. telling them that school has started and you need to get back and you need to leave August 28th because you've signed a contract. So you have to work through to the end of your contract. The only way that they're going to allow you to leave before your contracted end date is if there is a family emergency, someone had died, your family is terminally ill and you need to get back home. But it can't be, oh, because school classes start early, because you should have known what your commitments are with school and how soon you need to be back, right? So you need to pay careful attention to the date that you've signed for. So let me quickly go back to my Excel spreadsheet. So the name of the company is Beachmart. And one of the pro is that there is a $100 bonus. And another pro for me would have been the pay rate. Pay rate $8. Right, so we're gonna continue looking at the job. It says estimated hours per day, 7 to 8 hours, number of days per week, 5 weeks. So you can basically do the calculation from here. So if you're getting a minimum of 7 days per hour and a minimum of 5 days per week, you know that your minimum hours on average is 35 hours per week, right? It says possibility of students getting more than estimated hours average. So that is good. There's a possibility that you can get overtime, right? If so, is overtime paid at the rate of 1.5, which means time and a half? Yes. So that's another bonus. So let's quickly plug that in our thing. Overtime available and paid at time and a half, which is 1.5 per hour. Excuse my spelling. All right, quickly, we're gonna go back. All right, so the average, so the earliest start date, earliest end date. So these start and end dates simply mean that the earliest that you can start the job is June 1st, which isn't bad because most students, they go up with their exams to like May 20th or the end of May. So for persons that have late exam dates in May, this would be an excellent job. Even for persons, if you finish your exams by May 15th, you at least have another week or so to kind of put things together to leave. So again, I would not rule out this start date because June 1st is an okay start date for you. The latest time that you can arrive, which means latest start date, is June 15th. So if you know you can't arrive between the 1st and the 15th of June, then understandably, you're going to have to not select this job. Your earliest end date is September 8th. Right. Now, I know that for Jamaican J1 students, you're allowed to work between May 5th and September 7th. So the CHI coordinator, which is Mrs. Williams, that is joining us on our meeting today, what she can do is find out if for our students, if they would be allowed to leave prior to September 8th, since our end date is September 7th. And I'm sure that would not be a problem. So she can just find that out just to make sure. Because I'm sure she wouldn't have added this job to the list if there's a problem with students finishing by September 7th or earlier. All right, so the employer isn't willing to hire couples or groups of friends, but that's fine. I mean, if I have a friend and I want us to go to the same place, we just both of us just need to sign up for the same job and do well in the interview. All right, so basically that's it for that page. So we're gonna quickly go down, because we need to also look at the housing. But this is how I want you to go through the job list. Take your time, go through line by line. Right here it says, is training required? Yes, training is paid at the same wage. There are some jobs that don't pay you while you're being trained. So this is a good, this is another pro for the job. Is there a possibility to change positions? No. So you know that if you're signing up for this job as a cashier, you can't sign up with the hopes that you're going to be waiting tables or anything like that because you're being hired as a cashier. From the get-go, you know the cost of uniform. You're going to need uniform, and you already know that for 3 t-shirts, you're going to have at least $10 to pay for your t-shirts. It's normally customary for students to pay for their uniforms with employers, so this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a con that I would put on my spreadsheet. All right, housing information. So housing is provided, which is good. Right here from the get-go, you have the contact information of where you'll be staying, the contact person, and apparently the contact person is the employer. So the employer is the one that is assisting with housing. It's very important that students pay attention to this section that says are students required to sign a separate housing contract, which says yes. Say, for example, you're a student and you want to go to Beach Mart, but you have an aunt that lives in the same area where this job is located. So you want to stay with your aunt. Once you see on this contract where it says you're required to sign a separate housing contract, housing is mandatory, right? Normally, if your housing is not mandatory, they would say it, but if they're saying that you need to sign a contract, housing is mandatory. So once it's provided by the employer, you can't opt to live with a relative that is staying in that area. Right? It says that the type of housing is an apartment. Some homes are like, cabins. Some are actual houses. But this home is an apartment. It will be housing 2 to 4 persons per room. So this is what I like about the job description. They're very detailed. So you have no reason to complain that you didn't have enough information because it's very detailed. It's going to be $100 per person, which remember I said up to $100 is okay, but once it's going over 100, then you know that it's not so comparable. But there may be other elements that you can look at. 250 is housing deposit required. Yes, the deposit amount is 250. Now it's extremely important that you realize that it adds up, and that is why we recommend that students don't travel less than $1,000 as their pocket money, because if you're going to have to pay $100 upon arrival for your first week's rent, and you're going to have to pay a deposit as well upon arrival for 250, that's 350 US already that you're going to have to spend on the first day when you arrive overseas, right? And you're not going to be paid your first paycheck. You're not going to get your first paycheck until 2 weeks after you arrive. So you're looking at $200 for housing, one for this week, one for next week, plus the 250. That's 450 already out of pocket you would have had to spend before you get your first paycheck. And we haven't spoken about meals that you're going to have to buy to cover you for the first 2 weeks. And if you have to take transportation, we haven't spoken about that as yet. So where students are traveling up with just $200 and they're going to be expecting to get paid on the first day they arrive, that is just not going to be the case. So students need to be practical, and they just need to follow the contract, because the contract states you should not be traveling with anything less than 1,000 so that you can comfortably cover your expenses before your first paycheck. All right. The housing deposit, the good thing is that the housing deposit of 250 is refundable, as it states here, is housing deposit refundable. So you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get back your money, as long as you've left the people, the employer's home in a present condition, you haven't broken nor damaged their furniture, then you will get it. And then the good thing is that utilities is included. So from what I've seen, I'm not seeing anything really bad about the job. So if I go back now to my Excel spreadsheet, I'm seeing all of these good things. I receive a bonus. So yes, subsidies. So while there may not be subsidized meal, I'm getting a bonus. Pay rate is $8 per hour, so that isn't bad. The average hours per week is 35. Average hours per week is 35, which isn't bad. Overtime is available at time and a half. Rent is 100. I wouldn't put it as a con. For some persons, you will have it as a con, but if you compare it with other jobs, you may see other jobs with 80 or 90. But for me, I still wouldn't mark it down because the rent is $100 per week. Because you know, I've seen rent that is more expensive. But I mean, if you want to put it as a con, you can. So let's say that you're saying no, $100 high, so I want to put it as a con, I'll put it over here. But still yet, your pros outweigh the cons. So it's still a good job. You understand? And this is just basically where I want to take students to when they're making their job selections, right? So we're almost through. We only have 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to go back to our to our to our PowerPoint. I've done the live demo. I've shown you how it is that you go through a job. I've gone through the placement instruction sheet to show you how you actually physically submit your request. So if there are any questions, you can always feel free to email us at swatinfo@studentsworkandtravel.com. If you guys are getting a feedback or hearing a noise in my background, please let me know. These are also our contact numbers. I'm asking for students, please do not message us, call us on our WhatsApp number. We don't accept calls on the WhatsApp number. So these are the 4 numbers that you can make calls to, either Digi or Lime. For our WhatsApp number, I think the number is provided on the next slide. That's 512-6195. You can WhatsApp us on that number. Feel free to reach out to us on that number. That number only operates between 9 and 5 weekdays, Mondays to Fridays. Our office is closed until next week, Tuesday. So you're not going to be receiving any responses of such on the WhatsApp. I check it occasionally just for urgent messages, but I prefer if you just send us an email while we're off, and I'll check the mails for you. But please honor our request regarding the WhatsApp, and remember, do not post messages in the WhatsApp group because we've been receiving significant complaints of that. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have all the questions been answered, Glenisha? Or do we need to go through any other questions?
All the questions have been answered.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining. I can give you another minute. Are there any other questions that you guys would like to ask? Jamelia, Kimon, Paula, are you guys okay? Okay, so Jamelia says she's good. I'm gonna unmute you for a while. Paula, are you good? All right, so I'm not hearing Paula, but I'm hoping that everybody, Kimon, Paula, and everybody else, they're okay. If you have any other questions, please send us an email. And I hope that this PowerPoint presentation was good for you. Do you guys think you benefited from it? Was there anything that you weren't clear about that was cleared up during the PowerPoint? You can unmute your microphones and just answer quickly.
Yes, I am good. It's Paula.
Okay, very good, Paula. You sound like you're just waking up, so I'm going to allow you to go back to sleep. Kimon, I'm hoping that the PowerPoint was beneficial to you. Did you find it beneficial?
Yes, I did.
Okay, very good. And Jamelia already said that she's good. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining, and all the best for the rest of the holidays and for the new year.
Thank you, and the same to you.
All right, bye.